alive. Megan, welcome to the show.
Thanks for having me. Good to see
Uh,
you again.
yeah, good to see you again. I think it's 15 months since you were last on here.
Oh yeah.
A lot has
Yeah.
happened since then. A lot has happened. So that was
Yes.
that was just after you broke the world record initially, which I think was in your second race.
Yes.
Um, and you've relatively recently broken the world record again in Stockholm at the start of December. I wanted to ask you about that. Did you go into that race thinking that you could do it? And uh, was there a different approach that you took? Like I talked to Hunter on this podcast about how like he sort of ran faster than maybe he thinks he should do in a HYROX, and it paid off for him at that race. Did you take an approach like that in that one?
Um, I think my approach this year has been that I'm not allowing anyone else to dictate how I perform.
Mhm.
And so that has been something where I've seen myself now um taking a lead, or so far having taken a lead early. Um and then obviously maintaining that. And that is something that, I've been practicing in my race prep and everything, where I'm going out harder and faster, and I'm taking the whole race a step at a time, and I'm not thinking too far ahead. And that has just having a different mindset shift has really helped me approach the race differently. But yeah, I mean, at this point, I think, and I've learned so much from Hunter. He's been a great guide and mentor for me, just kind of being a female kind of in a similar position to him in a sense. Obviously, I'm not a world champion, but every race is an opportunity to see how the training has paid off. And so my goal is to be faster every time. So yeah, every time I go into a race, like my goal is to break my fastest time, which of course happens to be the record. So I had a really strong feeling in Stockholm that I was going to do it. And I think I had seen you before, and I was like, I'm breaking my record tomorrow or whatever. And you know what, knock on wood, every time I have said that and I've spoken that, I've done it. So it's just and it just comes from the confidence of training. Like it's not because I just think I'm so great. It's I've been putting the work in, and I'm seeing all the growth, and knowing what I've done in training. It's like it only makes sense for that to happen because
Yeah.
I'm getting faster, because I'm getting stronger. So yeah.
But once you've been doing this for a while, I guess like you're repeating training sessions, and so you know how you performed doing that similar session, whatever, 6 weeks ago or 12 weeks ago. So you do
Exactly.
get an idea. Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah. And
Uh,
just how you feel. Like, even if you don't do it faster per se, if I feel better in it, like if I did the same workout 3 weeks ago and I did it today, even if my time was the same, but I felt immensely better, it's like we clearly know we're moving in an upward trajectory. So that's a good
yeah.
thing.
Yeah. Is it when we talked in Stockholm a little bit? I think you sort of alluded to maybe you were doing a little bit less work. Like I still think my perception is you're a high volume athlete, high
Oh yeah.
volume trainer. But have you scaled it back a little bit? Do you feel like you're benefiting from that?
Yeah. So I think last year I had gotten a little caught up in feeling like I have a great group around me who is into HYROX and hybrid. And I think I was feeling like I had to work out with them to help support them. And so I was doing a lot of extra work that I didn't need to be doing. And, when you start getting smarter and you realize how those doing a little too much impacts the next thing, and how that impacts the next thing, it's now for me, it's training smarter. I mean, my volume is obviously still very high, but I've kind of learned for myself, like, I don't have to do as much very, very specific HYROX workouts to perform at a really, really high level in this. And I was doing so much of that last season. And I think also the mental side of it. So yeah, this is kind of like just cautioning anybody, because it's one of those things where you do a HYROX and it's like it's so exciting, and the training feels amazing, but it's very repetitive. And I would find later into the season last year, it was a little daunting sometimes approaching some of those workouts. I was like, oh my God, here we go. Like, here's another HYROX sim. It's like, how many have I done of these, you know? So this year I've kind of changed that a little bit, and it's definitely paying off, not just physically, but for the mental side of the sport, where we're competing at a really high level from, you know, for 9-10 months of the year. That's a long time to try to be in peak condition. So just the way I've mapped out my training has changed a lot, and I've learned. So
Yeah. I think it's like you touched on the repetitiveness. There's that willingness to go to that level of intensity that you can probably only do that so many times as well. Kind of that from
exactly.
that mental side of things. I was going to ask you about like the season and the season's long. Like ultimately, I presume your ultimate goal is to win the World Championships in June, and here you are in December, November, well,
Right.
it's January now, but you're at very good condition. How are you thinking about like maintaining that between now and then? Is it like, are you gonna scale back on the intensity in the next few months or anything like that? Have you thought about that?
Yeah. So I think one of the biggest things I've learned about myself, I think I'm an athlete that's a little bit similar to Hunter in this way, where he seems to do these real big strength blocks when he's not, you know, 2 months out from a race. That is part of, I think, why the reason I came in so strong initially was my strength was so, so high. And then throughout the season, it was just maintaining that, and then continuing to build back my running. And I've obviously had a ton of experience running at a very high level as well. So for me, I know, you know, in these few months, I've done a lot of high intense running. And after DC, I'll be ready to put a pretty big strength block back in again, where I'm getting that back up a little bit, and then we'll kind of shift again to more running side of things as we get a little bit closer, because we have 3 whole months,
Yeah.
or more from 3 months basically from DC to the World Championship. So that's my plan and how I will be approaching it. I'm sure a lot of athletes similar will be doing very similar things. But that has always been, I think, having the high element of strength with the high ability to run has been the reason I was able to come in from the get-go and have so much success. So it's very important to keep both things in the arsenal.
Okay. Okay. On the running side of things, like you mentioned, you come from a very high level running background anyway, but it feels, or it looks like you've made still been able to make improvements in that side of things this season so far. And maybe it's like the scaling back like we just talked about, but is there anything specific in the running training that you feel you've done this year? Is it more speed work, more threshold work, more zone 2 that's led to these improvements, do you think?
So one thing I've done this year is I've slowed my zone 2 runs down significantly.
Okay.
So that's a very interesting thing, because when I, you know, coming from a running background, I was always doing my zone 2 days at like 7:30 mile average, which is pretty fast. So I've learned that with the intensity of this type of training, and because you're hitting so many different elements, pulling back my zone 2 pace has made a huge difference for me just for recovery. So that was one thing.
Are you
And then
sorry, are you saying that like you weren't necessarily in zone 2, or you were in zone 2 but you're at the lower end of that?
I would say that my breathing was probably in zone 2, but I was probably still moving too fast, like muscular wise. So like my
Yeah.
legs weren't getting as recovered. Like I could very easily go run that pace for an easy day and feel fine. It's just the next workout, or like, am I truly recovering is the question.
Yeah.
So one of the ways I kind of made myself do that was I actually started doing some nasal breathing during my zone 2 days, because that really forces you to slow down whether you like it or not. So so that has helped a bit. And then Yeah, just a ton of threshold work. A lot less compromise running than I was doing last year and more threshold work. And that seems to be helping a lot. I actually just yesterday, this is a really cool feeling. I did a staple workout that I have done, I can't tell you how many times over my years of running, but specifically when I was doing half marathon training. And we actually just talked about how the elite runners are running their half or full marathon pace in a HYROX. We just talked about that on the RMR podcast. So this kind of goes with that. But I'm hitting the same splits I was hitting back then or slightly faster. And that was when I had run my fastest half marathon and my fastest 5K. So to be able to be in that type of running shape, still have the strength piece. I'm easily 10 pounds heavier than I was at that time. I was strictly running at that time. It just feels like I'm in this really, really strong place of overall fitness. And it's cool to be able to get there with all of this other training that I'm doing. So these are just all like really cool aspects of hybrid that like I geek out on, like how, because it is hard to maintain your strength and your speed and your erg ability and your high heart rate stuff like wall balls and burpees and things. It's hard to do all of it at a high level all the time. So it's cool to see it kind of all coming together.
Excellent. What is that
Yeah.
workout out of interest?
So it's 3x2 miles with 400 meters jogging recovery. And then I did a 1 by mile all out after the 3x2 and then 4x400s at mile pace. So it was 8 miles of volume.
Okay.
Yeah. So that gives anyone listening an indication of the level of running volume that some of us at this level are doing. It is very high.
Yeah.
But I think when you think of the race, so if I'm running half marathon pace in a race, I would say that the feeling of the race is very similar to the feeling of that distance of a running race. You kind of have to train somewhat similarly, I think, if you want to really get to that max level.
What sort of mileage are you doing in a week now?
So I'm around 60. Sometimes I dip over 60 miles, but usually not over 65. So really, and there are weeks where it's a little bit less. So sometimes it's like last week I was at 55. This week I'm already at 28 miles on Wednesday. So I'll definitely be at 60 miles this week. So.
And you just said like you done that workout and it was a better time than when you done your best 5K and your best half marathon. What are those bests?
So my best half is an hour 20 minutes and my best 5K was 16:42. And this was 2019. So it's cool to see my running coming back around to those times. So I got to hop in a 5K somewhere because I feel like I could maybe challenge that at some point.
Time to test.
Yeah. The conditions locally are not great for a road race right now, though. So
you've had a bit of a life change recently, so you're no longer working an office job. Was it an office job?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yes.
Has that been nice? Has the
my
new work been
God.
nice?
I would say that a lot of my performances this year I think that's a huge factor for me. Just stress, lifestyle change, being able to train at more ideal times of day, more recovery, better sleep, just everything. It's been a huge impact just on my training ability. So that's been a huge relief because last year working full-time, coaching, when I first started HYROX, I was working full-time and I was still coaching running. I was a varsity high school running coach. And then my daughter, it's like, I don't know how I was doing it. So yeah, it's been a really great chance for me to really pursue this at the highest level that I can possibly do it at. So
Good. You are, I mean, we should say you are working, right? You're
oh
doing
yes, yes.
PT. Yeah. Yeah.
Yes. So I'm a personal trainer, but I'm also coaching online, and it just gives me it's just so much more flexible. So it's been a really nice change.
Good. Are you, I know you, like, obviously you're in Stockholm on the day of the DECA World Championships. Are you solely focused on HYROX now? Do you think that's
Oh yeah.
important? Yeah.
Yeah. Um, I think DECA, I think DECA is a cool race. Um, I, if you're a person who's getting into this sport, there is so much more going on in the HYROX world. There are so many more players coming to the table. It is growing at a rapid rate. If you want to be seen, HYROX is the thing. DECA's not getting you anywhere, in my personal opinion. It is a cool event, but it's not nearly at the level that HYROX is, and I don't ever think it will be, if I'm being honest. So sorry to anyone who's feels the opposite, I guess, but I think that's the reality of it. So
I was going to ask you that. Are you, like, feeling excited about where the sport is heading, both just in
yeah,
terms of popularity, but then also the businesses coming in? Presumably,
yeah,
you're seeing some of that at the top of the sport.
yeah. I think it's such a cool, as someone who is still not, I'm a veteran in comparison to last year, but as someone who's still fairly new, um, it's very cool just in this 1 year to see the changes that are already happening. I mean, there's so many more countries getting involved, so many more races. They're selling out left and right. I mean, even in the States, the races are almost sold out. And that's, again, awesome to see it continuing to grow. And hopefully people like myself and Lauren and Hunter and Kent, and hopefully we're helping that happen. I think that's all of our goals in some way. But knowing some of the businesses that are coming in as global sponsors, it's very, very exciting. And I would say, like, it feels like the way CrossFit started to grow, maybe 6-7 years ago. It feels like that's kind of where it's heading. So it's very cool to be a part of that.
Yeah.
So
Yeah. Yeah.
yeah.
We talked about your Stockholm race, the world record. But since we spoke 15 months ago, you've not only broke the world record, you were the first woman to go under 60 minutes. You were second at the World Championships. You got the women's doubles world record and the mixed doubles world record. Do any of those stand out as, like, the best? What's your best experience in HYROX so far?
Well, I mean, there's two. The going under 60 minutes, I think, is probably one of the highlights of will be one of the highlights of my career forever. And not even just because I was the first to do it, but I think because of what it has now done for the women's field. I think having done that last year, I'm not saying I'm the reason, but I think it's part of the reason we are seeing the women's field continue to just get faster and faster and faster. It's once one person does it, it opens that up in everyone's minds that, oh my God, I can do this too, or I can get that too. And I think that's seeing the snowball effect. I think that's very cool. And just maybe hopefully being a pioneer in the sport. I think that's one of the things that I'm most proud of. World Championships, it was a tough day. It's still hard to even, like, think about. I think anyone, if you go in and you're hoping to win and you come short by very little, I think you'd understand how hard that is. But at the same time, my first season, I come in second at the World Championships, and I did a 60-minute race. It was my second best time that I'd ever done. One of the coolest experiences of my life, with just how many people were there cheering. And I mean, 4,000 people. And I've never really experienced that in a sporting event. So having that experience was unbelievable.
Yeah.
But yeah, and I think it opened my own eyes to the possibilities. And this year, I have even bigger goals. And if I hadn't done that then, they might not be what they are now. So
Yeah.
yeah.
One of the questions I'm asking people on here is like, do you have any favorite failures? Anything that like felt like a disaster in the time that has panned out to be a good thing? It would be wrong to call second at the World Championships a failure. I'll say that up front.
Yeah.
But does anything spring to mind there for you, or is it
Yeah.
potentially that? Is it potentially that second? Has that like spurred you on even more for this season?
Totally. And it's not even just the coming in second. It was more that I didn't feel my best that day. And I think that's one thing that's hard to swallow is when you know you gave it everything you had and everything was 100% and you just got beat. I think you can own that and you can live with that. I was cramping on the row, like just physically things were not going right, things I had never experienced in a race before. So then you go back and I think that's in your mind. You're like, okay, what did I do wrong? You have all these questions for yourself. And I think that was the bigger thing for me was like, I felt terrible, almost the whole race. And that was not something I had experienced really in a race before. I've messed races up, which everyone last year knew. At one point during the season, I was only 50% on actually getting the race right. So that's something I can now chuckle about. But at the time, I was like, even that, every time I'd go into a race, I was so nervous about screwing up the laps or just having these little things in the back of your mind. And this year, it's a whole different thing. But I think that feeling at Worlds definitely really has inspired my training. And knowing that I have to anticipate at any moment this not feeling right and just figure it out. You know what I mean? So, and you can't let your emotions get in the way, and that's hard to do because we're all human beings. So
Yeah.
trying to move on, if something's not going well, letting it go and moving on from it in the middle of a race is very hard to do. So
Yeah. I mentioned like your other achievements, your other world records, like the women's doubles world record, the mixed doubles world record. Like I've got to say, I think that I obviously put the world records on the website, so I'm like familiar with all of them. But I've got to say
yeah,
that mixed doubles world record in particular is a crazy time. Like 50,
thank you.
51:16. It's hard to see that
So
getting beaten.
and we think we can go 50. Like we think the course was so crowded with people
Yeah.
that we're like, all right, I think we could do 50 minutes. And especially like right now, that was kind of at the beginning of the season. I think we hadn't done as much high end running at that point. And that is, if you're doing a mixed doubles, you need to just do all VO2 running because that's literally what it is. There is such little recovery on the stations because you're splitting them. And if you're doing mixed doubles and you have a strong guy, it's even faster. I remember on the farmers, I was like, well, what the fuck? Slow down. Like I'm trying to catch my breath. I was running the whole farmers carry. So I think like now having done more, VO2 effort stuff, more threshold training, I think we could even go faster than that. But that's definitely a highlight because Kent's one of my closest friends and business partners. So it was a really fun race for us.
Yeah.
So
Did it
yeah,
hurt?
that's a whole different feeling. It hurt like hell. Yes. I think on the fifth run, I was like, I can't keep this going. I was like, we got to slow down. I had to pull it. He was so excited that I knew it was going to be real bad because, when you're like, I knew he was going to fly out of the tunnel like a rocket. And I was like, oh God, I knew I was going to be the one suffering more. So, so I had to be like, we got to slow it up a little or I'm not going to make it to the end of this. So, so yeah, it was really fun.
I think it's good, like sometimes to hear people like you, like at your levels, say how much it hurts. And
Yeah,
it's easy for us to watch from afar and be like, it's easy for them. Like they're fit, they've trained all their lives, and they find it easy. But you're suffering in that fairly
absolutely.
on, aren't you? And I vaguely
Yeah.
remember Rich saying, I think it might have been after you broke the initial world record. You told him like you were hurting from like ski erg onwards. You know,
Yeah.
if you want to break the world record, you've got to push yourself more than anyone's done it, right?
Yeah.
Yeah,
It's never gonna feel comfortable. If it's feeling comfortable, you're probably not doing it right, you
yeah,
know?
yeah.
So
Um, on that topic, right, where your mind goes in a race, we spoke before, and you said how like one of the things you think about is to just keep moving, like don't stop, let's try and move to the extent you can. Like, is that something you still use 15 months on? And is there anything else like you using during HYROX?
yeah. It seems like my best times have always come when my running splits are almost identical. And I would say that, within a very couple seconds of each other, every single run. And one thing that I do is when I'm coming out of a station, obviously I'm running through the rock zone or through the grid to get to the out. One thing I'm doing though is I'm allowing myself just a tiny little moment of recovery there. And the second I go out the out, I'm right back in pace. And I have trained my brain to think that way. And I would say that that has significantly helped me. I think it's hard to do because you come off a station, especially depending on what it is. Your body naturally wants to recover,
Mm.
and your body is telling you like, "Hey, slow down. I need to recover." And so to be able to trick your brain into getting right back into pace and right back into race mode on the run, I think that has really significantly helped me. And the other thing too is you're not going to win if your running isn't good. And that's just something that I learned from Worlds, especially. My running was not good that day, and I lost. You can't win on the stations. You just can't win the race just on the stations. So the stations for me are about doing them efficiently, effectively, but smart. It's not about killing it on any of them. That is also that mindset, ironically, has yielded some of my best stations, and I tend to be in the top two anyway. But just mentally being like keeping myself in check on them has allowed my that next run to be better and the running to be stronger, and then that I think is what's yielding the faster times for me. So just really changing how I think of the race has made a huge benefit to me this year. When I did my first HYROX, and anyone who watched, even my second in Chicago, I never broke on the sled push. I did them all unbroken, like a dummy, and then you learn, because then that next run is a sufferfest.
Yeah, yeah.
So it's all about figuring out how to be smart and efficient. So that's something that's different this year. You will see me break on every single one now. So
Yeah,
yeah.
yeah. Been there, done that.
Yeah. So if you haven't done one, here's your advice. Take it from me.
Yeah.
Don't do them unbroken.
um, if we talk about like your childhood or growing up, it feels like you're quite a competitive person. Does
Oh
that
yeah.
do you feel does that come from your parents? Is there
Yes.
yeah
100%. It's funny because when I watch my daughter play sports, sometimes she has that real competitive edge, and then other times she's doing cartwheels. And my parents, they tell me, like, you were never doing that. Like, I was, even from 5, 6 years old, if it was some type of competition, like, I was always in. I was in it. I wanted to win. Everything was a race. And that was just, I don't even know if it's something they did or if it was just kind of an intrinsic thing. My brother's very similar, and he's a professional athlete too. So obviously, like, something was going on in our childhood that had led us here. And my parents didn't let us, they didn't let us quit. They didn't let us make excuses. And the mindset was always, if you don't like the outcome, work harder. It's not anyone's fault. Like, own it and do the extra work. And we were taught really early on, even in high school sports, showing up to practice isn't enough. That's not enough. If you want to be great at something, you got to get in the weight room. You got to do the stretching. You got to make sure you're eating. Like, we were taught that early. I was weight training when I was 15. And this was long before there were school weight rooms and strength coaches. I mean, the high schools now around here have a full-time strength and conditioning coach in them for the athletes. That's a full-time salary position. That is not what I was going to, like a gym on my own and teaching myself how to do things. But that was just kind of the mentality that was instilled in us. And it's, I thought it was real tough at the time. And I remember like thinking, my dad was a little too hard on me, but now I'm very, very thankful for that because I'm seeing it on the other end too. And I'm like, okay, anytime I didn't maybe give it 100%, he would be frustrated with me. And I get it now. Like, it's hard watching your kid not give their best effort, and that's all they cared about, wasn't winning. It was like, but if I wasn't giving my best effort, they were like, what are you doing out there? You know what I mean? So, and now I'm very thankful for that. And the push in that. And it was never like an overwhelming push to do things, but it was when you make a commitment, you stick it through, you give it 110%, you do all the little things, you're a part of a team, your team's counting on you, all those things. There were no outs. So that's how I'm trying to raise my daughter now too, because it's completely shaped my life and really who I am. So
that was going to be my next question, funnily enough. Like, is there any advice that from a sporting perspective that you would want to give your daughter or do try to give your daughter? Is it that side of things?
Yeah. Mindset. I think mindset is everything. I think the way you view things, it's very much going to shape how you perform. So even those little things, like I was talking about, like allowing your emotions to get too involved in sports, like that's just not how it's not going to go well if you do that, because emotionally in the race, I'm like, this fucking sucks half the time. Right. If I allowed that thought process to take over, I wouldn't be what I'm, doing what I'm doing. So just being strong-willed and giving it your all and not, I think the biggest thing this year for me is like not being afraid to take chances and to put it all out there. If you enjoy doing something, go all in on it, because it's amazing what can come out of that. HYROX has completely changed my life. Complete 180 from last year. I'm in a completely different place, doing different things. And I think if I was afraid to take the chance, I wouldn't be here. So it's pretty cool. But yeah.
Going back to training, is there anything you've changed? Like we sort of touched on the running training, but is there anything you've changed your mind on? Maybe since we spoke, like in the last 15 months, with regard to training, is it doing a little bit less, the less intense stuff? Is that the main change you think you've made?
I would say my intensity is high, but I think it's more just like I'm approaching recovery differently.
Right.
Not every day has to be 3 sessions. And I have days where it's 3 sessions, but then the next day, maybe it's an easy run and just a normal lift. It's not, where I'm not spiking the heart rate. I'm not, overstimulating the muscles. So things that I'm doing are different. And again, like I do HYROX specific work, but I am doing less overall than I was probably doing a year ago. And I think that kind of happens too when you start to get to this level, or we're always right under that line of like what's too much. And part of it is just learning what I need to be doing and what I've just got no matter what. And I train in a lot of ways, what I do in training, it's translatable. It's very translatable. It's all translatable, but it's not always so specific all the time. There are times when you need to be doing that when you're gearing up for a race, 8 weeks, 10 weeks out, very HYROX specific. But before that, maybe it's heavier stuff in the weight room, heavier weights, not just HYROX simulation workouts over and over and over again. I think that has really benefited me. And I got more into CrossFit in the last year. I started doing I like looked around me at a race and I was like, every girl here does CrossFit. I should maybe try CrossFit. Like maybe there's something to this. And I think that keeping that high end engine, doing those short blasts, those 15-minute workouts where it's crazy high intensity, but it's over quickly, keeping that engine as well as your real high, like grindy engine, that blend has been really, really beneficial for me.
Okay.
Yeah, I think last year I love grindy. I love grunt work. I love doing stuff that takes an hour, 90 minutes. I love that. But then I found that in the races, I was always at that level, at that pace. So doing a little more high intensity, shorter workouts, it allows me to get to a different place. And I think it feels terrible, but I think the blend has been very beneficial for me this year.
So two sort of follow-on questions, like is it about the recovery side of things. So do you do anything specific for recovery other than just making sure like you are having some easier sessions in there? And then also, how do you ride that line between like doing enough work, doing a lot of work, and then also like not doing too much and not overtraining? Like it's even like something I battle with myself, like at my level. It's just like, should I go and do? I've got a ski erg and a bike erg in the garage. Like, should I go and do another session, or will that take away from tomorrow's session? It's like a question I'm constantly asking. Do you think about that? Do you have any thoughts on it?
Yeah, I think it's something that every athlete is just going to continue to toy with. I don't know that there's like a specific answer to it. I think for me, it's just changing the intensity and the stimulus, finding the stimulus that I'm like, okay, that felt really hard, but it was manageable, like it's a constant, and it's especially as you improve, it's a constant battle of figuring that out. I don't know that there's like one answer to that. And I think it's so dependent on the person and what they can handle. But recovery, and this is a question I get asked all the time. I think everybody wants like some special answer. Like, do you do cold plunges? Do you sauna? Do you red light therapy? And I do none of those things. I take creatine every day. That's what's in this bottle, creatine and essential amino acids every single day. I sleep and I eat. I hydrate, I sleep, I eat. I take my creatine because that obviously helps with muscle retention, but also with recovery, muscle recovery. I swear by it. I'm very diligent about that. But other than that, I'm getting 8 hours every night. I prioritize my sleep. I'm being really smart about the way I'm training. If I have a really hard session, really long running session the next day, I'm taking it easy. I'm not I'm very programmed with the way I have my structure of workouts. And I eat. And if you're not doing those things, if you're not eating enough and if you're not sleeping enough, you just totally ruined everything you just did. So honestly, it's not overcomplicated, And I think we tend as a society to want the easier answer. Like, oh, if I just buy this cold plunge, I'll recover so much more. It's like, that's just not, those things can be great and I'm not knocking them, but they're not necessary in my opinion. So
I
keep
agree.
it simple.
Sleeping calories are very underrated.
Very underrated. The most underrated things, I think. And I'm sure people would be surprised how much I am eating, how many calories, like there are obviously days it changes. Some days I'm just really not that hungry. I'm not going to force feed myself, but there are days where I'm eating 4,000 calories in a day, because I have to. I don't, so it's just that simple. Eat, sleep, drink water, not alcohol.
All right, thank you. This has been brilliant. What's the plan for the rest of the season? Is it we'll see you at the majors and then the Worlds?
Yeah.
Is that it, or
I'm thinking about coming over for the Cologne event.
Okay.
Because that just looks so cool. And last year I had FOMO not being there. It just looked amazing. So the FIBO Fitness Festival looked awesome. So I'm considering that, maybe London, I'm having FOMO already that I'm not coming to Manchester this weekend because again, these UK events are so massive.
Yeah,
I'm like, I got to get over there. Like, it just looks like a heck of a lot of fun. So,
they are next
but
level. Yeah,
yeah, it's so cool seeing the just the love for the sport that the UK has. So,
yeah.
shout out to all of you guys. But yeah, pretty much just the majors, maybe one or two of those other events just for fun. It would be like a doubles or something like that at one of those. Solo
Oh,
races are just majors and worlds for me this
okay.
year.
I was going to ask like any doubles appearances, or now we've got like the pro weight doubles.
Yeah. Well,
So,
I think Miss Lauren Weeks and I have to take on that women's pro doubles. The record I keep seeing it's broken. So I would love for us to show up and make it, a
yeah,
really fun race.
yeah, it'd be good to
Um,
see.
yeah. So who knows? Well, we've talked about it. It's more just trying to find the right timing and coordinating. We live on opposite ends of the country,
Okay.
so we'll see. But I think eventually you'll see us team up for that.
Okay, nice,
Yeah.
nice. One record you won't take. I asked asked all the elites for an interesting fact about themselves, and you said you could beat anyone at an ice cream eating
Oh
competition.
yeah.
But
Oh yeah.
you wouldn't beat me. You wouldn't beat me. So I
Are
might
you
have
serious?
to I might have to take you on in Vienna or Washington.
Okay, we can do that. You know who else would challenge us is Dylan Scott.
Oh yeah, yeah.
Yeah, he can put food away. It's pretty
Okay,
crazy.
okay. All right.
So, but
Well,
I'm still betting on me.
we'll we'll double that 4,000 calorie intake that you talked
Yeah, yeah,
about.
yeah, exactly.
All right, all right. Well, thank you for this. It's been great.
Yeah,
Good luck for the rest of the season and everything you're
sounds
doing.
good.
And
Hope to
hopefully,
see you in Vienna.
yes, I will do.
Awesome.
All right, take
All
care.
right,
Talk soon.
thanks.